Thank you for having me.
Greetings, folks. This is Brian Harris, the Independent Black Voters on Facebook, where we believe that it is people, not parties. We must be informed voters, and more importantly, we must vote, but we must be informed voters. Today, I'm happy to have here Max Berkley, attorney. Is it attorney Max
Yes.
Berkley? That is running for judge. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself, and then we're going to ask him some questions prevalent to his candidacy. So, first of all, welcome, Max.
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate you having me on. Just a little introduction about myself. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. I've lived here almost my entire life. I went to law school here at UNLV. I graduated in 2009. I took the bar exam shortly after that, and I have been a public defender for just over 11 years. I love the job. After law school, I was trying to decide on a type of law where I could be involved in public service, but also be in court, as I've always enjoyed that aspect of practicing. And a public defender was a good opportunity for me. I was offered the position, I accepted it, and it's been a very rewarding last 11 years. This is my first time running for judge. I'm running for Justice Court Department 7, which is going to be an open seat. Judge Karen Bennett Herron has been serving for several years. She has decided to retire, so the seat is vacant, and I'm running for it and hoping to take over when she retires. And elections in November, so obviously now's a good time for people to start paying attention. It's not too far away. So once again, thank you for letting me be with you today.
Well, we thank you. As I said, we are very active, and Miss Camilla Bywaters is on. How are you today, Miss Bywater?
Hey, I wasn't sure if I should log in or not, but I logged in.
Right. As I said, we invite various members. We are a Facebook group, and we spend our time trying to educate. And anyone is welcome. Hopefully, you join. We do not care about the color of your skin to join the Independent Black Voters, but we are there to talk about issues that are prevalent to the Black community. We're not here to talk about any of the other issues or let people dictate talking to us about their issues. We want to focus on the issues in the Black community. So, and obviously, social and equal justice is a major problem or major issue in the Black community, and there are a lot of assets. Ms. Bywaters has really been focusing on education, and I spend some time talking about social justice and economic justice. We're able to have a lot of subject matter experts on here to talk. And we just had Mr. Mike Kelly come on. Mike is a friend. He actually ran the campaign for Robert Twix Taylor just recently, who ran for North Las Vegas mayor. How you doing, Mike? Let's be on. Okay. Okay, you're on mute. Well, he's on mute. I'll let him say hello when he gets a minute. So, Mike, tell us, first of all, your is yours just a Las Vegas area, or is it Clark County wide?
Just Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us, what are the responsibilities of the judgeship that you are looking for to run?
Absolutely. So, yeah, and just to, I guess, expand for a quick minute on your first question, they're basically currently 15 Justice Court departments just in Las Vegas Township, and we're getting a 16th in November. So there's going to be 16 Justice Court departments all within Las Vegas Township. So, we'll be on everyone's ballot, all 16 departments. Now, some of them are not, some of the seats are not up. Some of them, were unopposed, but everyone who's running for Justice Court in Las Vegas, if you have a Las Vegas address, we're going to be on your ballot. Now, as far as the responsibilities for a justice of the peace, in Justice Court Department 7, which is the department that I practice in right now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a public defender. The way our office works is that we are assigned to one specific justice court, and we go about once a week, and we're divided up into teams. So I go about once a week to Justice Court Department 7. It is a criminal calendar, and there's a little bit of protective orders. Don't see a lot of landlord-tenant issues, although that can come up in justice court, as well as occasionally some when a business is, or when someone is being sued for an amount of under $10,000, that type of case also can appear in justice court. So it can change at any point, but at least for the last several years, and I've been appearing in justice court for about the last 3 years, it's been about 99% criminal, with some temporary protective orders. And just real quick to kind of expand on that, in justice court, that's the first court people see that have been arrested. So when someone gets arrested, they're entitled to have their initial arraignment within 48 hours. That's their first appearance. That's in front of a justice court judge. Beyond that, if a case doesn't resolve and it's a felony or a gross misdemeanor charge, then it'll get set for a preliminary hearing. That's in front of a justice court judge. If it is a misdemeanor case and the case doesn't resolve, then it would get set for trial. And eventually the trial would be in front of the justice court judge. So, it's a pretty, there's a lot going on, on the criminal side, and those are most of the responsibilities we'd have. One other thing that's important to mention, justice court judges also determine whether someone should be released on his or her own recognizance after they get arrested. They appear in front of a judge. They in most cases are entitled to bail. However, frequently a request for an OR is made. Then the district attorney gets an opportunity to respond if they don't agree with that, and then the judge makes the decision. So that's another big responsibility that the Justice of the Peace has in Department 7.
Okay, great. I had to unmute myself. We're going to do things. I'm going to ask both Ms. Bywaters and Mr. Kelly, do you have some specific questions to ask to Attorney Berkley before I do? I'm kind of going ladies first, and then I'm going to have Mike if you have some questions, and then I'll follow up with the questions that I have.
Sure. My name is Camila Bywaters. I'm the president of the Las Vegas Alliance of Black School Educators, and I also serve as the co-chair for education for the National Action Network Las Vegas chapter. And even though I'm in the education sector, a lot of our concern is the school to prison pipeline. And there have been quite a few complaints about our court system and how Black communities are being treated when they're in the court. I'm sorry, hold on one second. I apologize. Mm-hmm. So there are questions, Black communities, young people are often give complaints that they feel like their voice is not being heard. There's situations where people they don't feel that they're have a fair opportunity to express their case. It's just a lot of unfairness happening. So my question for you is, what are, how are you planning to move forward to ensure that young Black communities and their families have a fair opportunity to state their case, and then also just have a fair shot of proving their innocence and being treated fairly and being treated like a human being within the court process?
Great question. And I've been a public defender now for a long time, and that's a real motivation for me. Is that every case I get assigned to, what I want to ensure is that I work hard for everyone, but specifically that I don't end up being that attorney that so many defendants complain about. I never got to meet my attorney. I never got to discuss my case with my attorney. I asked for this investigation to be done, and nothing was, nothing ever happened. Now, I called my attorney 3 times, and he never returned my call. I never wanted to be that person they were talking about, because a lot of times people go through the criminal justice system, they're not sure exactly what's going on. They want to, as you kind of mentioned in your question, feel that they have an attorney that is putting a lot of effort into their individual case. So I've done my best as a public defender, to be easily accessible, to be transparent, to try to work hard for everybody. Now, it's not always easy. We have a big caseload, and there are definitely times, especially when I'm in trial, where some other clients, may not hear back from me right away. But I think overall, I think as a defense attorney, one of the motivations we've had, and I commend the people I work with too, is a real emphasis is put on communication, and being accessible. And now to kind of transfer that to being a judge, obviously a judge is a little different role. I've learned from someone whom I think is a great person to try to be like, and that's Judge Bennett Herron. And I don't know if you're familiar with her. It sounds like I see you're nodding your head, so it sounds like you do know the judge.
Yes.
She's the current judge in Department 7. So, and I've appeared in front of her now, for a long time. And she comes in well prepared. She comes in, clearly having read about every case. She also comes in and I think finds a way to motivate everyone around her to make sure that they, especially on the defense side, that defense attorneys are speaking with their clients. She gives us time if we need, a continuance. So, we need to make, to contact them and discuss their case further. She's very good about doing that. In addition, she treats everyone in the courtroom, I think, with a great deal of respect, especially defendants. Frequently, I've seen judges who they may treat attorneys a certain way, but when a defendant or someone else who's not an attorney tries to speak to the judge, they don't listen, they shut them down, they kind of blow them off. She's not that way at all. So I think she's somebody who I would really try to be a lot like. And I would say, specific to, the Black community, try to, make sure that they feel, and everybody feels, but specific just to the question about the Black community, that, I reviewed their case. I gave them an opportunity to be heard in court. I made sure to the best of my ability that their attorney, had the proper amount of time to prepare for the case, had the opportunity to speak to their individual clients, and that they got a fair shot in court.
Thank you.
Sure.
You're on mute, Brian.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, do you have a question? Okay, well, we just had Rodney come on. Rodney, welcome. Rodney is another part of the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. He is also a community activist, and he is very, very involved in the community, as all of us on here. Okay, Mike, he'll get to it. Just text us if you have a question. So I'm going to ask you the next question, and I'm going to let Rodney ask you a question. Black community is glad we're starting to see balance as far as there was a record amount of what I want to say of defenders that came into the judgeships in the last round of judges. So we're liking to see balance because the Black community believes in equal justice. We also believe in law and order. But if you have unequal justice, you have unequal law and order. If you have, but if you don't have correct law and order, you have unequal justice also. And I say that because we're in trying times now. I give this example. We did some things that I think were right on the bail initiative to try to make bail affordable for people, but we've also gotten to a point where it's almost become catch and release. And I was basically at a 7-Eleven where I was purchasing, and I saw homeless people that just indiscriminately would walk into 7-Eleven, take whatever they had, and walk out. As a consumer, those are passed on to me. As a person who's concerned about everything, there's got to be a balance somewhere where those of us who make a mistake should have affordable bail, but we should not be in a catch and release strategy where there are no rules and boundaries. Kind of give me your opinion on what I just said here and your thoughts on it as it becomes to bail and as it becomes to how do we manage with equal justice while also maintaining law and order.
I think you put it really well. I think that's the challenge, that a lot of judges face is balancing and also following the law. And to give you a little bit of background, when I first started about 11 years ago at the public defender's office, it was pretty straightforward with bail. It was basically they have category A felonies, B, C, D, and E. And it was almost always standard bail in every case. Category B standard bail was 20,000. Category C it was 10. Category D it was 5. Category E it was 3, and then gross misdemeanor was 2,000. And you could pretty well assume bail would be set at that number for each, depending on what category felony you were facing. And the analysis was not thorough at all. That's changed some, and there's been a progression, and there was recently a Supreme Court decision that came down called Valdez-Jimenez, and with Valdez-Jimenez, the burden is on the state to show that someone is either a flight risk or it presents a danger to the community. If they're able to do that, then, and then typically after the state makes their argument, they'll ask for a certain bail amount. Certainly someone's financial, position factors in as well. Because also one of the issues that happened when everything was set at standard bail is for a rich person, a $5,000 bail was just a small fine and they'd pay it and be out right away. For someone poor or somebody financially challenged, $5,000, $2,000 bail might as well be $1 million because they'd have no chance of getting out of custody. So the analysis is a lot more thorough. Certainly, I think as a judge, the first thing that judge needs to look at is safety of the community. Specifically, is somebody a danger in the sense that they've committed a lot of violent acts. But even if someone doesn't have a lot of violence in their background, as you kind of mentioned in your question, are they continually shoplifting? Are they continually getting in trouble? Do they refuse to come back to court? Once they get released, are we ever going to see them again? Those are all things that certainly need to be factored in as well. So I think the balance that you said is actually not far off from the Valdez-Jimenez Supreme Court decision, which is basically that there is a presumption of innocence. There's certainly a presumption against pretrial detention unless the state can prove certain factors, the two that I mentioned being a threat to the community as well as a flight risk. And if a district attorney is able to show that and someone is genuinely a threat to the community, then I think a judge has to follow the law and impose a high bail in some cases. But there's certainly those steps have to happen before a judge sets a bail in a case.
Great. I'm back off mute now. And we just had Mr. Rodney Smith come on. Greetings, Rodney. I'm going to let you ask the next question.
Good morning or good afternoon now. I like your explanation on Valdez Jimenez. And so just in general, is that something that you think is the right way to go about conducting hearings now?
Yeah, I do. And I think it sets certain guidelines and more of a formal procedure that we really didn't have before. For the most part, the arguments, throughout the 11 years have been pretty similar, from defense attorneys versus district attorneys, but now there's at least better guidelines set, I think, for judges to follow. And it becomes a little bit more clear, okay, the state did show, why someone's a danger to the community based on going through the criminal background or other factors. So there are certain, I think, more highlighted benchmarks to make. So yeah, I think it was definitely a step in the right direction.
So one of the things about and you're running for, I believe, judge, right?
Yeah, Justice Court and Department 7.
Right. So one of the things that I hear a lot of voters say is I have no idea of how to determine whether a judge is a good judge or not. And so even though we get the luxury, because other states don't, of selecting judges here by the people's vote, what suggestions do you have that voters could determine whether once you're on the bench, or even for that matter, whether you should get on the bench, what should those matrices be for the average voter? And what would you suggest that they should be?
Yeah, you're right. It's difficult. And even, right now we're only a few months away from the election. And even though, voters see our signs and, they may, follow us on social media, that clearly they don't get to, most voters will not get to know us on a very personal level, and also may not know much about us professionally, just based on some of the signs and a few of the social media stuff that they see. So it's hard. There's no doubt. I think the benefit to the election system is that voters do get a say in who their judges are. And in addition to that, for the specific candidates, I think one of the real benefits is getting to meet people in the community. If this was an appointment process, I probably would not have sat down. I'd be willing to sit down with anybody, but realistically, other groups would not be as involved, in the appointment process. Different people, who want to be active, who I've got a chance to meet and learn about. That may not have happened if we did an appointment process instead. So that's one of the things I really like about the election process. The challenge, though, and it's kind of indirectly mentioned in your question, is a lot of voters don't know a ton about who they're voting for. And that's the drawback to, I think, electing judges. What I would recommend is certainly, they do have an endorsement process through, a number of different groups, including this one. So my first suggestion would be, individually, reach out, go to our websites, call us up, text, email, any questions you've got. I'm always happy to respond. And I've done that. Some people have reached out, not thousands and thousands, but a couple dozen. And I'm always happy to hear people. And if they've got questions about my point of view or my background, I'm certainly happy to talk to them. On top of that, I would say a lot of people are involved in different groups, like the Independent Black Voter and dozens of other groups in the community. These type of opportunities here are I think are very helpful to voters. So if you're a member of the Independent Black Voter, you don't know who I am, listen to this 30-minute, hour-long interview, and then decide if I'm somebody that would appeal to them, as a member of the bench, as a justice court judge. And then in addition to that, if you're not part of these groups, there are the Review Journal, the Clark County Bar Association, that does have some good information about all the different candidates running, and most of them do have an endorsement process as well. So again, that's not a great answer, but I think that's the best I think I could suggest.
So, and I hope that as you continue to go through this process, that you will possibly see opportunities to devise questions that we should ask, because many people don't even know what questions they should ask to determine whether a judge is the right judge. But my final question in this round is, a police officer once told me, Rodney, I can arrest you and pick you up for almost anything, because almost everything that you do, there's some code against it. And it's almost as if the system is set up to ensure that if they want to get us, they can get us for something. Now, I don't know if that's exactly true, but sometimes it seems that way. Once you're on the bench and you've gotten that experience, would you be willing to suggest to citizens as well as legislators what laws we maybe don't need anymore, maybe are duplicate, redundant, overlapping, even sometimes conflicting? Just simply, maybe we have too many laws about a thing and it's unnecessary. Would you be willing to use your experience on the bench to educate the community about that and inform our legislators about it?
Yes, and I'll gotta answer this in two parts. So what a lot of people don't know is justice court judges are the judges that approve search warrants. So if a detective believes they have probable cause, needs a judge to sign and approve a search warrant, they call one of the members of the justice of the they call one of the justice court judges. There are now going to be 16 of them, and basically the way it's set up is one judge has the phone. So they kind of call it, one judge is responsible for picking up the phone for about a week straight. Then it goes to the next judge, then the next judge. So for about 3 weeks a year or so, each judge will be responsible for approving search warrants. And I think my answer, or when it comes specifically to pulling people over or probable cause for a search warrant, we should hold the police, and we should hold law enforcement to the standard of probable cause. Now, I know it's easy to say, well, they'll just make probable cause up, and that's a worry. Of course, that's always going to be a concern. But there have been police reports that I've looked at as a public defender where it pretty much will just say, not many. I'll be fair to the police, but once in a while you do see a police report which will say, it's nighttime, it's a high crime area, and I saw someone cross the street with a backpack. We follow them because we, believe that, that person was became someone of interest. And something like that is not probable cause. There needs to be a lot more. Otherwise, as you kind of mentioned, if you can go into a certain neighborhood and pull anyone over at nighttime who's wearing a backpack, that's going to be any person that's outside their home or in a public area. So we need probable cause to mean something more than that. And as a, so certainly as a justice court judge, I'd have some influence over that. As far as the second part of the question, yeah, so a judge doesn't make laws. As judges, we're responsible for interpreting the laws and making sure they're implemented properly. But certainly, yes, if a member of the legislature wanted to speak to me, had questions, what are you seeing in your court? What are some types of crime? Do they seem repetitive? Did you see something that you might suggest? Of course, yeah, I'd sit down with anybody that requested it, and I'd give them an honest answer as to what I thought.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mike, are you able to unmute? If not, text me your question. But I saw you had a question, so if you can unmute. If not, go ahead and text it, and I'll read it aloud, please. So while we're waiting for his question, obviously, the pendulum has swung. This is person. There are a couple of. Hold on. No, hold on. I'm not blocking you. Let me see. So I'm actually giving you an ask one. I'm not blocking you. Let me see. We're trying to get him unmuted.
Hey, Brian, Sister Camila Bywaters is like a master or mistress of Zoom, so she may be able to help you out.
It's saying that I cannot, it's saying that he's muted, but he says I'm blocking it. It says, but I'm not blocking it. Let me see. Mike, try to log out and log back in. Try to log out and log back in. And I'll ask this question going forward here. Max, here's a question that, or a couple of questions that we ask all candidates. This is basically a personal question. They're personal questions. So again, they're not related to the actual job of being a judge, but they are they give us a little bit more about your belief and value system. So simple question: who won the election in 2020?
Joe Biden, the presidential election.
Are you more concerned about voter security or voter suppression?
Oh, okay, I gotcha. I would say voter suppression.
Okay. Are you concerned about the rise of white nationalism in America?
Yes.
Okay. And I ask those questions because these are ideology beliefs. At the Independent Black Voters are very concerned about the rise of misinformation. We are concerned about the rise of white nationalism under the guise of patriotism. So we ask those questions because there are certain groups that ask these same questions and to vet their candidates. And so we ask those for yourself. So thank you for asking that. Mike, are you able to unmute yet? I don't know what's going on because I'm not keeping you from talking. I'll tell you what, Mike, if you can text your question, I can at least get him there. I don't know what's going on, but I think it's on your side. Let me see something. So, have you ready? Okay, go ahead, Rodney.
Well, I actually typed it in the chat while Mikey is getting his situation together. Many people come to the Independent Black Voters and to other Black groups who say that they want to support learn and support our needs and concerns, but they really don't know much about us. And so I was curious as to what books, and this is a two-part question really, is what books have you read and would you recommend to others to read to enhance or to establish their knowledge of the African American community. So that is so we'll start there.
Sure. And actually, I'm just maybe. Darn, I just checked. I apparently I moved it, but in my desk just recently, I had the biography of John Lewis, whom, if unfortunately, he just passed away, but I had a chance to listen to him in person a few times. My little bit of background, my mom served in Congress for some period of time, and she became good friends with Congressman Lewis, and he came out a number of times to Las Vegas and spoke at Touro University, which is a medical medical university out here. He also spoke at the Suncoast through one of the church groups that had a big event for him. And he was one of the most captivating speakers, really somebody who led a fascinating life. I think most viewers may know, most viewers may not be aware, but he also walked in Selma, Alabama, with Dr. Martin Luther King. And that's, was very early in his life. And he's somebody who devoted his life to public service. And it really, I think, crushed a lot of people when he passed away. Thankfully, led a long life and a very productive life, but it was genuinely a tough one for a lot of us when he did pass on. Anyway, I did get to read his biography, and I think it was a great read. Partly just because, and I know there's biographies of a lot of, great people out there, a lot of American icons, but he's one of them whom, just, on top of, for just, talk about African Americans, obviously there's books about Obama, there's plenty of books about Dr. Martin Luther King, but John Lewis is somebody who, at least on a personal level, because I got to, meet him a few times, was pretty influential. And I think too, what we tend to learn the more educated we are is that we have a lot more in common with each other than we realize. We may come from different backgrounds. We may have, different, skin tones, different socioeconomic backgrounds, but for the most part, usually we have a lot in common, and we're looking for a lot of the same things. And I feel like that's really what he fought for his entire life was, I think, not just, civil rights for African Americans, but I think civil rights for everybody and equality for everybody. So he's probably somebody who, and I know your specific question was at a book, and I went on a little bit more about a specific person, but obviously it's related. That would definitely be a book I'd recommend. And certainly, John Lewis, if you also, somebody's not a book reader, but, wants to learn a little bit more, there's a ton of speeches that he gives. And for anyone who's an aspiring, speaker or attorney, he is about the best I've ever heard. I remember, and I'll finish my answer, in the next, 30 seconds, but I remember when he spoke at the Suncoast, with this church group afterward, Robert Eglett, who's a well-known personal injury attorney here in Las Vegas, he came over to me, and this was early in my career. I hadn't done a trial yet. And I remember he said, that was the perfect closing argument right there. You know when to pause, you know when to raise your voice, you know when to emphasize, you get more intense when you're trying to emphasize something. And he was just a master at it, and led a great life. So I would say, for a book, that's one of my favorites I've ever read.
Okay. Brian, is Sister Camila, did she ask her questions yet?
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you, and we have Mr. Robert Taylor who has just come on. Robert, let me see if your mute works. If you unmute, say hello, please.
Hello, hello, hello. Grand afternoon, everybody. Positive PM. How you doing, Max?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
Vanglorious myself.
Okay,
Good.
we're going to let you ask, but we have to go back to Ms. Bywaters. Do you have a question? And then we're going to have you, Mr. Robert Taylor, ask a question.
I think the questions that have been asked right now, I'm pretty good on. I don't have anything for right now.
What about you, Mr. Taylor? I know you jumped in. Are there any questions you have for the candidate for judge?
I'm sorry, I always have questions too, but I just jumped on, so I'm trying to hear a little more. Then I'll ask a question if you guys are not at the end of it. My apologies for being late. I have like 5 things to do in like 2 hours. I'm sorry.
No problem. I can jump in and then I'll come back to you once you get warmed up. How's that?
Amazing.
Now, again, as I said, you're running for judge, but we also like to know your opinions when it comes to your ideologies, beliefs, and values that are not related to being just a judge. So I'm going to go back to Ms. Bywater's area of the school systems. We have a lot of issues in the school system. There's been attempts, or it looks like there are some groups that want to break up the Clark County School District into smaller groups. There's some people that believe that school choice is the solution. There's some people who believe that fix the problem in the public school systems is the issue. We're all over the map there. Give me just your overall opinion of where you think we are in the school system, and what do you think might be the solutions, just from a personal view, not from a judge view. And let me make that: where do you think you are, where we are, and what do you think we need to do going forward?
So, this one hits pretty close to home. My wife is a public school teacher. She teaches at Adelia Guy, which is a public school in North Las Vegas. And yeah, she has been teaching preschool there to the deaf and hard of hearing for about the last 9 years. So this topic has come up a couple times in my house. Unfortunately, as you kind of mentioned, there's a lot of different viewpoints and a lot of different challenges. We're about 1,400 teachers short right now in Clark County. Teacher retention is a problem. Teacher pay being frozen is a problem. It's been less of a problem the last couple of years, but I think my wife's had her pay frozen 3 or 4 times in the last 9 years, where she was supposed to be on a certain scale, but then the county basically said, we don't have the money to pay you up to what we said we were going to, so we're gonna have to freeze your pay, and you're gonna stay at a certain number. And thankfully, our house is okay. We're in a little better financial position, but there's a lot of homes where teachers are the breadwinners, and households are reliant on that income. And if you're freezing pay, and certainly if you're cutting pay, people aren't going to be able to stay in continue to be public school teachers. They already don't make very much, and now if you're also not giving them their pay raises they earn, that's a problem. It is, in addition to security issues. We've heard a number of times recently with students attacking teachers, including the one I believe at El Dorado High School, where a teacher unfortunately was hurt very badly. So all these are challenges. I will be honest, this is not my area of expertise, so I'll give a pretty short answer. But I would say recruiting more teachers, being able to retain more teachers, putting more money into the public school system. Now, I think we're kind of on the right, we're going in that direction, but it needs to continue significantly. We need a lot more resources. We're constantly hearing stories about teachers that have to spend their own money to put books in the classroom, or put additional furniture in the classroom. Those are things, again, that should really never happen. I mean, education, and we see it, it's not just important to the kids, but through specific to my job, frequently the individuals that, are, getting arrested, or have criminal backgrounds, often, didn't have the opportunity, to get a quality education. And, sometimes it's within the home, but a lot of times it's also in the classroom. So, an improved education, an improved school system will absolutely, change the course of these kids' lives, but will change the course of criminal justice in the sense that you'd have way fewer cases, I think, with people that, I think, with a community and with a society that's better educated. That's just, factual, that's proven. So, again, I don't have any, real, specific solutions that I'm trying to, trying to, put an emphasis on, but I would say certainly put a lot more into our public school system, make sure teachers are being paid properly, make sure teachers are being retained, and make sure at the very least we have enough teachers to go around to educate our kids in our community.
Okay, but a key question, and Rodney had a question. Again, do you think the Clark County school system should remain as it is, or do you think we should break it up? Just this is your opinion as a person.
Sure, and that I do see that that's a more specific question. That I would probably need a little more information about. So, not trying to dodge the question, I'd probably want to learn more about if we did break it up, what exactly it would look like. Would there be, multiple different, school boards? Would it be broken up into two? Where would the division be? How would the resources be allocated? I'd need to know more information about it, which, to be perfectly candid, I don't. So don't have a great answer to that one.
We'll talk to him. Rodney, you had a question, right?
Yeah, actually, I did, and it sort of falls on the questions Brian is asking you, and goes back a little bit to the question I previously asked you. In talking with white people and doing some research on my own, one of the things that white people told me is that they don't have really much contact with Black people. And so because of that, up until oftentimes college, they don't really know much about us. And so I would always ask them, well, but what did you learn about us in school? And the answer is usually very little. And then sometimes they'll tell me things that they wish they have learned as they were going in K through 12. So that is the question I'm going to ask you, maybe another two-parter. So the first part is, what have you learned about Black people since you have graduated high school that you wished or was surprised that you had not learned when you were going to K through 12? So that's the first part. And then the second part, which might be the same, is what should be taught in our education system about Black people that wasn't taught when you went through?
Sure. So, first thing, and I'll start with kind of the second part is, I think an accurate, learning is certainly about, culture and history and background, but specifically, and it's, to me, it's amazing that this is even really a question. We need to learn the true history of this country. And what that means is that there are going to be some topics that are going to be uncomfortable. And the idea that we are not going to teach it because it doesn't always reflect that positive on white people or other groups is preposterous to me. Listen, I'm, I guess coming from someone who's Jewish, in Germany, right now they still teach about the Holocaust. They don't pretend it didn't happen. The idea that, well, it doesn't reflect that well upon us, or we're, clearly we're the bad guys here, so let's just pretend it didn't happen. That's not their viewpoint. And I think they're better off for it. So the idea in this country that we're going to pretend slavery didn't happen, we're going to pretend that Native Americans weren't, kicked out of their homeland and, many of them killed and, treated horribly. The idea that, we didn't take over certain areas, in this country from, Mexico. Yeah, I recognize that, it doesn't always paint us to look peaceful and doesn't always show that we've treated all these other groups well. But I think to prevent certain, I think education, is vital to, I think, prevent future patterns of behavior. And that's the first thing I would say is, and I was fortunate, where I grew up, I took American history, I took, history, world history, and teachers never shied away from those topics. And I had a great US history teacher my junior year of high school who, she taught us in our textbooks, and we watched some videos that made every single person uncomfortable. It was very graphic and very detailed, but it also was accurate. And I think it gives you a higher level of empathy, a higher level of education. I went to a Bonanza High School, here in Las Vegas. So yeah, and I remember it was Coach Eubanks, Mr. Eubanks was my teacher at U.S. history, and I think that we learned a little bit about it in grade school. We learned more about it in high school, but looking back, I think at every level, history was one of my favorite subjects. And I think I say that because I learned about all the topics. We didn't just talk about, all right, what is going to make everyone feel good, or, what areas of history can we talk about that, make white people look like the good guys, and let's just focus on that. No, and again, it doesn't mean, there are ways to teach it in a way where I think students feel a sense of pride and a sense of respect for who they are. But I'm saying, Assemblyman Mumford, I'm reading here. He actually, I know him well. I left a message for him a couple months ago. He was a teacher at Bonanza High School as well. He was never my, he was never my teacher, but I knew him very well at high school. And one of my favorites too. But the point I was making is, no one has to be ashamed in the sense that, just because, their people are, someone, who may have their same background acted a certain way, it doesn't mean that you should be ashamed. I think it means that you should learn from it, understand it, and make sure you yourself going forward never act like that. Now, I think we absolutely need history, we need education, and we need every part of American history that's important taught to all of our students.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor said he has a question here, so I'm going to pass the time to him to ask a question because we've got about 10 minutes left.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Good. Actually, to jump in on top of that, the topic for some little research, because I try to be a historian myself, but I just learned listening to NPR News last week that there was a Jewish gentleman who was really close to Martin Luther King, and he was in a lot of different marches with MLK, was very close to him, and helped a lot of Jewish people connect to Black people back in the day. So when you get a chance, just Google that. That way, you know that aspect also. But that's not my question. I'm just giving you a heads up.
Good day.
All right. No problem. So a big thing is you kind of know where a person is going to know where they came from, right? And my sister, Alicia Taylor, speaks highly about your mother, and she's very critical on everybody. So that's a good thing. So I know you come from, good people. But my question, running for judge, what judge in Las Vegas did you look up to? And have you ever had a mentor from any judge? And why did you look up to them?
Sure. So a couple that I'll mention, and the first one came up kind of early, so I'm not sure you heard it or not, but I've been in front of Judge Karen Bennett Herron now for a little over 3 years. And she's someone who I definitely look up to, and just to rehash, I think that she is always prepared. She treats everyone with a certain level of respect, but at the same time expects a high level of performance in her courtroom. That makes court efficient. And to the best of her ability, she makes sure that attorneys, are prepared and are meeting with their clients as much as I think a judge is able to do. So Judge Bennett Herron would definitely be on the list. And then Harmony Letizia is another Justice Court judge. She's a former public defender. I worked with her for some years. I've known her family for a long time. And now she's on the bench. And also, she shows up early to court. She takes the bench. She knows exactly what's going on, with every single case. I think she's, fair to, all the attorneys. She lets everyone, make their representations. I think she applies the law appropriately. So I would say, Karen Bennett Herron and Harmony Letizia are two judges that come to mind that I look up to.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I know who they both are. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, we're getting close to the end. And I appreciate it. We asked, for those who got on, we asked you some questions about the actual position. But as I said, to us, part of us is let's get to know you, Max, because your ideologies will exhibit and your beliefs and values how you perform on the bench more than anything else. Right now, we are in what I call very, very dangerous times in America. We have become more polarized than I've seen in my 60 years of life here in America. There seems to be far right. There seems to be far left. There seems to be very little middle ground. We are seeing almost a civil war happening now without the guns and the muskets, where one group calls themselves a patriots, implying that the other group isn't. Lies and basically lies are becoming fact, and facts are becoming lies. We're in dangerous times. Again, this is not from you as a judge. This is from you as a person. What's your thought on that, and how do you think that we can heal America?
It's definitely, I think it's accurate. There's no doubt about it. I think unfortunately now, when I was younger, and my mom, as I mentioned, she was involved in public office ever since I was real young. And only reason I mention that is because, there were plenty of people that disagreed with her, but, the vitriol and the hatred just wasn't there. She'd walk around and, you'd have some people again who, you might give an unpleasant look, at a public place. But certainly, there would be a certain level of respect that really isn't we're not seeing as much now. And now, often people will walk around, and we saw it with, Governor Sisolak, and he was cursed at and threatened, at I think Lindo Michoacan, or a restaurant out here. And we've seen that happen to a handful of, public servants. And I don't have, a great way to solve it, but we do need to start showing a certain level of respect for people with opposing viewpoints. And in addition to that, I think, education does help. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times people don't always get to learn, don't always spend the time to learn about, issues, learn about topics. And then social media, let's face it, social media does wonders. On one hand, like a meeting like this, obviously it's the creation of Zoom and the creation of several other media outlets, so we can have these type of discussions and not be face to face, is great. And we can also get it out to thousands of people. That's the positive of social media. The downside of social media is, unfortunately, you've got a lot of very extreme viewpoints that are now being thrown out and being talked about, and maybe almost feel like they're more mainstream. And some viewpoints, I think people can sometimes be driven based on what they're hearing on social media, and misinformed, and unfortunately, it's not always great for our community. So, again, I encourage people to get involved and use social media, but just be, careful of what you're reading and who, what specific sources you're following.
Have about 2 minutes to go. I'm going to say, and I'm going to let you take it home in the last minute. But Ron, do you have anything that you wanted to say here before we let Max take this home?
No, I've just been listening.
Okay. And just so you know, Max, we have a very diverse groups here. Actually, Ron is here to represent, obviously the African community, as far as folks from the continent of Africa who got here a little bit later than we did. So we have obviously Miss Camilla Bywater. She has been very active in attempts to hold the school system accountable so that all people go forward. We have Mr. Rodney Smith here. Mr. Rodney Smith is a person. He has a Purple Heart. He is a veteran. He is well respected in our community. He is a person who is committed. He is a person that is committed himself to help our community get much better. And Mr. Robert Taylor, what can I say? He ran for mayor in North Las Vegas. The reason that he out there, I think they had one of the largest turnouts ever. And while he may not have won the battle, I believe he will win the war in the long term. We need young people like him to be engaged if we're going to see change. We need young people like him who are going to basically fight for a better future for everyone. So again, I thank you for the independent Black voters for coming on and being candid. And then now I'm going to give you a chance to take us home, Max. Again, tell us what you're running for and just tell us why you think we should vote for you.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for participating. Obviously, all of you, just not only spent, an hour with me today, but clearly came prepared, clearly had questions ready. So I appreciate the fact that, everyone took time, to make sure that this was a thoughtful and hopefully, educational experience for everyone that was listening. Once again, my name is Max Berkley. I'm running for Justice Court in Department 7. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, went to Bonanza High School, left briefly to go to the University of Arizona. Worked a year in Washington, D.C. For Senator Reid, returned here to UNLV, and have been a public defender for the last 11 years. I am passionate about public service, certainly have lots of background in the courtroom. I believe, have seen at this point, represented thousands and thousands of different clients. It's a very rewarding job. It's very gratifying, but it's also prepared me where if I'm fortunate enough to be elected judge, I can start on day one and feel that I can be fair and certainly have, with my background, will know the type of cases that will appear in front of me, will be able to perform the important job of being a judge right from the beginning. So again, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you. And if anybody has any questions, that's listening, my best way to get a hold of me is, my email is max@berkley4judge.com, BERKLEY, and then the number 4 judge.com. So please reach out to me. I was brought up a little bit earlier that sometimes, people don't always get to know a lot about their judges. I'm accessible, and if anyone's got questions, I'm happy to, answer them. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you. And again, we'll be reaching out to you. We've got a couple of outreach events that we're going to do. And so I'm going to touch base with you on that, and we're going to follow up because, again, the more knowledge we have, the more power the community has. And the folks here who've taken their time to listen and taken their afternoon to come on, I thank each and every one of you all. You are powerful people in your right. I thank you very much. And again, as we go forward in this election, we will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Do we good?